After her husband Daniel's passing, Emily Parker found herself moving through the days like someone walking underwater slow, heavy and without a sense of direction. Their home in Portland had once been a place where laughter rolled from room to room, where Daniel played music on Sunday mornings, where they cooked together, where life felt warm. But now every corner reminded her of the silence that came after losing the one person she had imagined growing old with. She tried to busy herself with cleaning, sorting papers, and organizing closets she never cared about before, but nothing helped. The house felt too big, too quiet, and far too empty for one grieving heart. She avoided the living room where Daniel's favorite blanket still rested on the couch. She avoided the kitchen where they once danced while cooking dinner. But the place she avoided most was the small wooden box in their bedroom closet. The box where Daniel kept old letters, photographs, tiny keepsakes, and ticket stubs from concerts they attended together. Whenever she opened that box, her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. But that evening, something in her gave way. She sat on the bedroom floor, legs folded, the box open beside her. Her hands shook as she touched a folded letter he had written to her on their 4th anniversary. She read only the first line before the tears came again. He had written, "I love you more every year, and I hope I get a lifetime to prove it." The ache of those words felt too sharp. Emily lowered the letter and pressed it against her heart, letting the weight of loss wash over her. She didn't expect any comfort. She didn't expect anyone to check on her. Daniel had been the center of her world, and without him, she felt detached from everything and everyone. Even the neighbors, who were kind people, had given her space. Sometimes silence feels easier than facing sympathy. Just as she wiped her eyes and pushed the box away, she heard a soft, careful knock coming from the front door. It wasn't loud or demanding. It was almost hesitant, as though the person on the other side wasn't sure if they should be there. For a moment, she wondered if she had imagined it. But then the knock came again, gentle and patient. Emily stood, straightened her sweater, and walked to the door with slow steps. When she opened it, she found her next-door neighbor, Michael Turner, standing there. Michael was in his early 40s, quiet, friendly. Someone she usually exchanged simple greetings with during morning walks or when taking out the trash. They had never shared more than a few sentences at a time. He looked uncomfortable, not because he didn't care, but because he didn't want to intrude. In his hands was a tray of warm homemade soup, steam rising from the lid. "Hi, Emily," he said in a low voice, his eyes gentle but unsure. "I wasn't sure if this was the right thing to do. I just didn't want you to eat alone tonight." Those words broke something inside her, not in a painful way, but in a way that reminded her she wasn't invisible. People still saw her. People still cared, even if they didn't know how to show it. "Oh," she whispered, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Michael, you didn't have to." "I know," he said quickly, shifting his weight. "I just thought it might help, even a little." Emily stepped aside. "Do you want to come in?" Michael hesitated for a moment, then nodded softly. "Only if it's okay with you." She led him inside. The house still carried the feeling of loss, but Michael didn't look around or comment on anything. He placed the soup on the kitchen counter and followed her into the living room. For a moment, they sat without speaking. She felt nervous, unsure why his presence felt strangely comforting. Maybe it was because he didn't try to give her advice. Maybe because he didn't say, "It gets easier," or "You're strong" phrases she had heard too many times from people who meant well but didn't understand what grief really felt like. "So, how are you holding up?" he asked gently. Emily swallowed. "Some days I feel like I'm managing. Other days," her voice cracked a little, "other days feel like today." Michael nodded slowly, an expression of understanding touching his face. "Grief doesn't follow a pattern," he said. "Sometimes it hits harder when you think you're doing okay." His words surprised her. So calm, so grounded. He didn't talk like someone offering empty comfort. He talked like someone who had stood in that place before. They talked for only a short time. Maybe 20 minutes, but the conversation carried a kind of warmth Emily hadn't felt in weeks. Michael didn't pry into her memories of Daniel. He didn't ask uncomfortable questions. He simply listened when she spoke and stayed quiet when she couldn't. As he stood to leave, he paused by the doorway. "Emily," he said softly, "I hope you don't mind me stopping by tonight. I just didn't like the idea of you sitting alone with your grief." She felt her throat tighten again. "Thank you, really," he nodded, offering a small smile. "If you ever need anything help with the yard, groceries, anything at all, I'm right next door." "Michael," she said before he stepped outside. He turned back. "Yeah, why today?" she asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. He looked at her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Because today, you looked like someone who needed a knock on the door." She didn't know how to respond. The sentence hung in the air for a moment, warm and unexpected. "Good night, Emily," he said, stepping into the cool evening air. "Good night," she whispered. When she closed the door, she leaned against it, feeling something she hadn't felt since Daniel passed relief. Not because the pain was gone, but because someone had reached out with kindness at the exact moment she needed it. And as she walked back to the bedroom, closed the box of old letters, she realized one simple truth. Tonight, she didn't feel completely alone. But what Michael said before leaving stayed in her heart much longer than she expected. In the days after Michael brought soup that night, something subtle began to change in Emily's home. The silence didn't feel as sharp, and the loneliness didn't press against her chest the same way. She wasn't healed, not even close, but the world felt a little less heavy. She still woke up reaching for the side of the bed that used to be Daniel's. She still cried when she saw his handwriting on old notes. But at least now, there was someone who had looked into her grief without turning away. What surprised her most was how naturally Michael slipped into the rhythm of her days. He didn't show up unannounced or act like he was rescuing her. Instead, he appeared in small, thoughtful ways. He would text her before going to the grocery store to ask if she needed anything. He would knock gently to return the empty soup dish and leave a small bag of freshly baked bread beside it. And when he noticed the porch light flickering one evening, he simply brought his tools and fixed it without making a big deal out of it. It wasn't grand gestures, just consistency. Kindness without expectation. One afternoon, about a week after his first visit, Emily found herself sitting on the back porch. It was early autumn, and the trees behind the house had begun turning shades of orange and red. The wind carried a crispness that hinted winter wasn't far away. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the cool air on her skin and thinking about how different this season felt without Daniel by her side. She heard footsteps on the gravel path, and when she looked up, saw Michael standing there with a small potted plant in his hands. "I found this at the farmer's market," he said with a shy smile. "Thought it might brighten the porch a little." Emily took the plant lavender, her favorite scent, and set it beside her chair. "Thank you," she said softly. "It's beautiful." He sat in the chair opposite hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It simply felt like both were learning how to exist in this new space they'd created. "You don't have to keep coming by." "No," Emily said eventually, her voice gentle but uncertain. "I appreciate it, but I don't want you to feel obligated." Michael rested his elbows on his knees, looking at the trees rather than her. "I'm not doing this out of obligation. Then why?" she asked, genuinely curious. He took a moment before answering. When he finally looked at her, his expression was thoughtful, almost vulnerable. "Because I know what it looks like when someone is trying to stay strong on the outside," he said quietly. "I've been there." Emily's eyebrows lifted slightly. She had never asked about his past. She never expected him to share this kind of detail. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he continued. "We were married for 10 years. And when she passed, I felt like the ground disappeared under me. People tried to help, but most didn't know how. They said the usual things: time heals, stay strong, she's in a better place. And none of it made sense at the time." Emily leaned back, absorbing his words. She had not known this part of his life, and hearing it opened a door she hadn't expected. "I know how isolating grief can feel," Michael said. "That's why I didn't want you to sit alone with it. Not because I think I can fix anything, just because I know how much a simple presence can mean." She didn't know what to say. For a moment she simply watched him, noticing the way his voice softened when he spoke of his wife. It wasn't with pain, exactly. It was with respect. That touched her deeply. "I'm sorry," Emily whispered. "I didn't know." "It's okay," he said with a gentle nod. "I don't talk about it much, but seeing you these past few weeks, it brought things back. Not in a bad way, just in a familiar way." They sat together as sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows across the porch. Emily felt a warmth inside her, not romantic exactly, but something new and surprising. Being understood felt like a rare gift. "You know," Michael added, looking down at his hands, "I'm not here to replace anyone. I would never try. I just don't think anyone should carry this kind of weight alone." His voice was sincere, steady, and full of care. Emily felt her heartbeat shift, like something inside her was waking up after a long, numb sleep. "I appreciate you more than you know," she said quietly. I don't know what to do with all these emotions. Some days I'm okay, and other days I feel guilty for even smiling." "That's normal," he said softly. "Grief doesn't disappear when good moments come. But good moments are still allowed." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man who understood pain without letting it harden him. His presence didn't overwhelm, hurt steadied her. They continued talking. Not about anything heavy, but about little things, how he found the lavender plant. Stories from his job, small memories from their neighborhood. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in a long time, Emily found herself laughing softly at something he said. The sound felt strange on her tongue, but freeing. As the sun began to dip behind the trees, the air grew colder. Michael stood to leave. "I should let you rest," he said. "But before I go, I want to say something." Emily's heart tightened with anticipation. "I'm not trying to move into your life too quickly," he said. "I just want you to know that I'm here. Not because I feel sorry for you. Not because I'm trying to fill a space. But because grief recognizes grief. And sometimes to people who understand that pain can help each other feel less alone." His words landed deeply gentle, honest and unexpected. Emily didn't know how to respond. She felt gratitude, confusion, warmth, and fear all at once. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Michael gave her a soft nod. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just take your time." He stepped off the porch and walked back toward his house, leaving her sitting there with lavender beside her, and a swirl of new feelings inside her chest. And as she watched him disappear around the corner, she realized something she hadn't admitted even to herself. She didn't want him to stop coming by. After the weeks of small visits and quiet support, Emily felt a fragile sense of normalcy returning. She no longer dreaded every knock on the door. She even looked forward to Michael's brief appearances, the way he seemed to intuit her needs without asking too much. The way his presence didn't overwhelm but comforted. For a while, it felt as if life could carry on without feeling completely hollow. Yet, just as she began to settle into this delicate routine, Michael stopped coming by. It wasn't abrupt or dramatic. There were no explanations, no messages. One evening, Emily found herself walking past his house after running errands, expecting to see him on his porch as usual. Instead, the front steps were empty. She waved, and for the first time, he didn't wave back. He looked down, busy with something in his hands, his eyes avoiding hers. She felt an unexpected sting, a strange mix of disappointment and worry. Days passed, and he didn't knock, didn't send a text, didn't leave a note. Emily tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he had his own life to attend to. But the silence felt heavier than the grief she had carried after Daniel passed. The longing to see him, to hear his voice, grew more acute with each passing day. She realized that his absence wasn't just the absence of a neighbor. It was the absence of someone who understood her pain without judgment. Someone who had become a subtle anchor in her unstable world. One chilly evening, unable to bear the quiet any longer, Emily wrapped herself in a thick coat and walked next door. Her heart raced with a combination of fear and hope. She had no plan, she only knew she needed to see him. As she approached his porch, she saw him sitting alone in a chair, the faint glow of a porch light casting shadows across his face. He looked lost in thought, distant, as if he had been waiting for something he didn't even know how to name. "Michael," she called softly. He startled, then looked up. Recognition followed by a flicker of concern crossed his face. "Emily, is everything okay?" I I don't know," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Why did you stop coming by?" I missed you." Michael's gaze fell to his hands. He seemed torn between explaining and remaining silent. Finally he spoke, voice low but steady. "I didn't want to confuse you. I thought maybe I was overstepping, or that my presence might be more of a burden than a comfort." Emily's chest tightened. His words, so careful, so considerate, carried an unexpected weight. She had thought he was avoiding her, and the uncertainty had gnawed at her heart. But now, hearing the truth, she felt a mix of relief and frustration. "You broke me more than my grief," she whispered. "You were the one person who made me feel alive again, and then you just pulled away." Michael lifted his eyes to hers, a quiet pain in his expression. "I was trying to do the right thing. I didn't want to take advantage of someone who's still healing. I wanted you to make your own choices without feeling pressured by my presence. I care about you too much to force anything, Emily." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. She could see it in the way his shoulders tensed, in the way his hands fidgeted slightly. He wasn't saying these words to protect himself, he was protecting her. And in doing so, he had inadvertently hurt her. Emily felt a sharp pang of gratitude and longing at the same time. "I understand," she said softly, though her heart felt torn. But it didn't feel like protection. It felt like loss all over again. Michael nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, and I'm sorry. I never wanted to cause you more pain." For a long moment, they sat in silence, listening to the soft hum of the neighborhood around them. The autumn wind rustled through the trees, carrying leaves that skittered across the driveway. Emily's mind wandered to the weeks before, the times he had brought soup, the evenings they spent on the porch, the way he had listened without judgment. And she realized that what she felt for him wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to name yet. "Michael," she said finally, her voice almost a whisper. "I don't want to be alone anymore, not with my grief, not with my feelings, not with anything. I can't keep pretending that I'm okay by myself." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Emily noticed a change. There was a softness in his eyes, a mixture of relief and hope, as if he had been holding back for her sake. And hearing her words allowed him to exhale after weeks of careful restraint. "You don't have to pretend," he said quietly. "I'm here. You never have to do this alone. And I promise, I'll never force you into anything. You'll take your time, and I'll be patient. But I'm not leaving." The honesty in his voice reached something inside her that had been dormant since Daniel's passing. She realized that healing wasn't about erasing grief, it was about finding someone who could walk beside you even while you carried it. And in that moment, Michael wasn't just a neighbor. He was a presence that made life feel possible again. A reminder that human connection could exist without judgment or pressure. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Not from sadness this time, but from relief and recognition. She had feared that she would never feel hope again, that joy was a distant memory, that love was forever lost. And yet here he was, patient, understanding, gentle, offering her a chance at life without demanding that she forget her past. "Thank you," she said softly, "for staying, for caring, for understanding." Michael reached out and gently placed his hand on hers. "Always," he said simply. "I'll be here when you're ready. That's all I want." The wind carried a chill, but Emily felt warmth spread through her chest. The ache of loss was still there, would never truly leave, but for the first time. It felt balanced by something new, the quiet promise of companionship. of understanding, of healing at a gentle pace. As they sat together, side by side on his porch, the world around them felt both vast and intimate. There was no rush, no pressure, only a shared space where emotions could be acknowledged without fear. Emily realized that this careful, respectful connection was a gift far beyond what she had expected in the months since. Daniel passed, and as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the neighborhood, Emily understood something crucial. She didn't have to be ready for everything at once. Healing came in moments, in glances, in the quiet reassurance of someone who chose to stay, even when it would have been easier to walk away. For the first time since her husband's passing, she felt the stirrings of hope, not loud or overwhelming, but gentle, persistent, and unshakable. Michael's presence had reminded her that even after immense loss, life could still offer warmth, understanding, and the possibility of love. That night, Emily returned to her home with a heart that was slightly lighter. She placed her hands over the letter Daniel had written years ago and allowed herself a small smile. Grief still existed, but it no longer had the power to isolate her completely. She had someone who cared, someone who had shown that emotional support could exist without judgment or expectation. And in that realization, Emily began to believe in the possibility of moving forwards, slowly, carefully, but with hope. Weeks passed since that evening on Michael's porch when Emily had admitted her fear of being alone. The days turned colder, autumn leaves gave way to early winter frost, and Emily found herself navigating life in small, careful steps. The grief she carried for Daniel was still present, but the heavy loneliness that had once threatened to consume her had lessened. She had begun to feel something new, a quiet, persistent hope. She thought often of Michael, of his patience, his kindness, his quiet respect for her healing process. And deep down she realized she was ready to take a step toward the life he had quietly offered her. It was a soft December evening when Emily found herself standing in front of Michael's porch, heart pounding. Snow was falling lightly, coating the street in a thin, sparkling layer. She had hesitated for days before finally deciding to come. She felt nervous, afraid of rejection, afraid that she had misread his intentions, but stronger than that was a sense of courage that only comes from the desire to move forward after a long period of heartbreak. Her hand hovered over the doorbell, shaking slightly, and then she knocked. The sound echoed softly into the quiet night. Moments later, the door opened, and there he was, Michael, standing there in a warm sweater, surprise evident in his eyes. "Emily, are you okay?" he asked, concern threading his voice. She nodded, unsure of how to start, but finally found the words that had been resting in her heart for weeks. "I'm ready," she whispered. He blinked, a soft smile forming on his lips. "Ready for?" "For this," she said, motioning toward the doorway, toward him, toward the quiet life they might share. "I'm ready to stop being alone. I'm ready to be with someone who understands, who cares. I don't want to pretend I'm okay anymore." Michael's expression softened, a warmth spreading across his face. He didn't rush forward, didn't pull her inside immediately. Instead, he stepped aside, creating space, letting her enter on her own terms. That simple act, so considerate, so gentle, reminded her why she had been drawn to him from the start. He had never tried to rush her, never tried to fill the void left by Daniel. He had only offered himself as a companion, a steady presence, a patient friend. And now it was her choice to step forward. As Emily entered the house, a quiet sense of peace washed over her. The living room smelled faintly of pine from the small holiday decorations Michael had placed, and soft light glowed from the lamp in the corner. She noticed small touches of his care throughout the home: a neatly folded blanket on the sofa, a cup of herbal tea left on the table. These small gestures weren't grand or extravagant, but they spoke volumes about his thoughtfulness. They sat together on the sofa, the quiet hum of the heater filling the room. Neither of them spoke immediately. There was no need to. The silence was comfortable, a sign that the connection they had built over weeks of careful attention didn't need constant words to be meaningful. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the tension in her chest ease for the first time in months. "Michael," she said softly, breaking the silence. I never expected to feel this. Hope again. Not after Daniel. Her voice trailed off, emotions catching her. He reached out and gently placed his hand over hers. I know, he said quietly. You don't have to forget him. You don't have to move on from what you had. But life still has room for happiness, for connection. And I want to be part of that for you, if you'll let me. Emily felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief, from the long-suppressed desire to be seen, understood, and valued. She squeezed his hand, and in that simple gesture, she felt the unspoken promise between them. They spent hours talking that night, not about grief or the past, but about life, hopes, and small joys. Michael shared stories about his own healing, about the ways he had learned to cope with loss. Emily shared memories of Daniel, not to dwell in sadness, but to honor him and the love they had shared. Michael listened with respect, without interruption, without judgment, allowing her to speak freely, allowing her past and present to coexist as the evening wore on. Emily realized that what she felt for Michael was not a replacement for her love for Daniel. It was something different, a careful, patient attraction born from understanding, mutual respect, and emotional safety. She felt her heart open slowly, without fear, without rush, without expectation. Michael, too, was careful. He didn't try to force a romantic moment. He didn't press for words or declarations. He simply sat beside her, offering his presence, his quiet assurance, his patience. In that simplicity, Emily felt a connection deeper than she had expected, an emotional intimacy built on trust and mutual care. At one point, Michael got up to bring a second cup of tea, leaving Emily watching him move around the room. She realized how natural it felt to be in his company, how safe and calm she felt. This wasn't a whirlwind romance, and it wasn't dramatic. It was steady, grounded, and honest, the kind of connection that could endure because it wasn't built on rushing or pressure, but on understanding and respect. When he returned with the tea, he sat down again, offering her a warm smile. I'm glad you came tonight, he said softly. I've been waiting for you to feel ready, not because I wanted anything from you, but because I wanted you to heal enough to make this choice freely. Emily nodded, feeling her heart swell with gratitude and affection. I'm ready, she repeated, this time with more certainty. Not to forget, not to replace, but to live again. To allow happiness and connection back into my life. They spent the rest of the night sharing laughter and stories, sipping tea and enjoying the quiet comfort of each other's company. The world outside could wait. The snow continued to fall gently, and inside, warmth filled the room, not just from the heater, but from the feeling of mutual understanding and the careful blossoming of something new. For the first time since Daniel's passing, Emily felt alive, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a soft, steady way. She realized that healing was not about erasing the past, it was about creating space for the present, for moments of connection, for people who could walk beside you without judgment or rush. By the time she left Michael's house that night, her heart was lighter. She had taken a step forward, not alone, not with desperation, but with quiet courage and hope. She had chosen to let someone in, and in return, she had been met with patience, care, and understanding, walking back to her own home through the soft snowfall. Emily reflected on the journey she had taken from unbearable grief to cautious hope, from isolation to connection. She knew there would still be hard days, moments when Daniel's absence would feel sharp and raw. But now there was someone who would stand beside her, someone who had proven that love and companionship could be gentle, respectful, and enduring. And in that realization, Emily understood the true gift Michael had given her, not a replacement, not a cure, but a reminder that life could still hold beauty, warmth, and emotional intimacy, even after heartbreak. She looked up at the sky as the snowflakes landed softly on her cheeks and whispered to herself, my story isn't over. Not yet. And for the first time in months, she believed it.